The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
One day, almost 65 years ago, a man named Carl Stotts sat on his porch in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. He looked out on a field and saw kids playing sandlot baseball. That day could have been the best thing that happened for kids across America, or the worst. Carl Stotts decided to organize kids to play in a program called Little League Baseball. The program caught on like a wildfire. Soon leagues were formed across America, and soon parents got more involved than the kids had hoped for.
Call the police! Call the police!
While most kids had and continue to have a great time learning and playing the game of baseball, soon parents began to live vicariously through their kids, and bedlam broke out.
What'd she do? She did her job!
It wasn't until years later when Fred Engh questioned about these unrest situations and asked the question, why isn't someone doing something about this? Fred Engh did something about the behavior of overzealous coaches and parents in kids' sports. He created the National Alliance for Youth Sports.
Sports can be a tremendously powerful tool for impacting the lives of children. The research has been proven. We are about action. The National Alliance for Youth Sports provides training, memberships, programs, certifications, resources, and guides to help strengthen and improve community sports programs. Because better sports for kids means better kids for life. Join us at nays.org.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and hope you like that little introduction. I know each week that I come on, people ask me a question, how do you know anything about all this? Well, as I mentioned in my previous show, I had a program with about 15,000 kids, and I used to see all these things happening. And then in my own family, I saw all of the abusive situations that took place. And then, like it said, I wondered, why isn't somebody doing anything about it? And that's why I wrote the book, Why Johnny Hates Sports. But I thought maybe it's good to take a look back in time as to when this whole thing started and trying to tell people how the organization of the National Alliance for Youth Sports started across America. So I'm going to show you a little show about how that began that I introduced a few years back. I founded the National Alliance for Youth Sports as a nonprofit organization back in 1981. Most people know us by our acronym today as NAYS, or as some call it NAYS. Our mission has always been to ensure that sports experiences for kids are fun, they're safe, and they're positive. It actually started as the National Youth Sport Coaches Association. It was a training program for parents who sign up to coach their kids' sports teams. And back then, we focused on educating them on their position as a role model and preparing them for their coaching tasks. Well, over the years, we realized that a great youth sports experience for kids is dependent on much, much more than just a confident and knowledgeable coach. Now we offer programs, services, and tools for everyone involved in youth sports, from the professional, volunteer administrator, the coach, the official, even the parents and the participants. Our programs are provided at the local level through partnerships with community-based organizations.
We've worked with more than 3,000 organizations over the years. They're the ones running youth sport programs on the ground, like parks and recreation departments, boys and girls clubs, police athletic leagues, YMCAs, religious groups, and the many independent volunteer-based organizations throughout the country. I'm probably proudest of our long-standing relationship with the military, where many of our educational programs have been required on U.S. bases around the world for many, many years. The thing about youth sports is, why do we have sports for children anyway? Well, if they're done the right way, and if adults involved had the proper training and mindset, the sports programs have the right structure and focus, then youth sports can be an enjoyable and powerful lesson for children with lessons for the rest of their life. We want to keep kids playing and having fun. We want them to sign up again next year. That's really what it's all about. That's why the National Alliance for Youth Sports is committed to our mission and partners with so many like-minded organizations. After all, together we can really make a difference.
That was a few years back, as you can tell. And even though those situations that we showed about how powerful sports can be, still we have the fact that parents would just do some of the most awful things you could imagine. And I got a call one day from a guy named Jim Rome. And Jim Rome has, and still today has, one of the top sports shows in America, with about 2 million followers all across the country. And Jim became famous, like a lot of people become famous because a little bit of a quirk or something happened here or there. There was a quarterback that played for Los Angeles. His name was Jim Everett. And Jim Everett was noted for not wanting to take a hit. And so all of a sudden, Jim Rome invites Jim Everett back on his show, and he calls him Chris Everett, the tennis player, making fun of him. And Jim Everett says to him, you call me Chris Everett one more time again, and I'm coming at you. And here's this national show that is on television. And sure enough, Jim Rome calls him Chris Everett. Jim Everett dives across the table, tackles him on the floor, and that's how Jim Rome became famous. And that's how a lot of people. I'll give you another quick story. When I was in Wilmington, Delaware, there was a guy that just started with the Wilmington News Journal as a sports writer. And he used to come out and follow us when I was coaching football, and I'd see him on the sidelines and whatnot, and he'd come over and interview me for the next game and whatnot. Finally, I said to him after the season, I said, Jim, you're too good a writer to be just stuck in a small town like Wilmington. I've got a friend of mine in Baltimore that is the sports editor for the Baltimore Sun. 2 weeks after that, he got hired by the Baltimore Sun. And I didn't hear from him for a while. But then all of a sudden, he, like Jim Rome, became famous because of an incident. And they had a pitcher for Detroit, and Jim Hawkins, my friend, that went from Baltimore to Detroit to be the sports writer for them, used to criticize this pitcher. His name was Denny McLain. And one day, Denny McLain, before the game, goes and grabs a big bucket of ice water and pours it on my good friend Jim Hawkins, who now became nationally famous. So a couple of those people do one little thing and they become famous in life for that. But what's that have to do with all of this and why Johnny hates sports? I thought you'd like to hear an interview that I did with Jim Rome a few years ago, and to see how he felt, America felt, about kids playing sports. So here we go with this audio recording of the show.
Right now, something a little bit different. I want to talk about an issue. And it's something we talked about on the Last Word last night, and it's something I think that involves all of you and relates to all of you directly or at least indirectly, and that is the issue of youth sports violence and harassment and the like. We're joined right now by the president of the National Alliance of Youth Sports, Fred Engh, who's going to help us break this issue down and talk about how bad it's become and what we can do about it. Fred, it's very good to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, Jim, thanks a lot. It was great being on the show last night. This is the 90th show I've done in the last 3 weeks, and it's the first time I've had an encore, so I'm honored.
Well, obviously, Fred, you did well enough last night, and I think the issue is important enough to talk about here. And when you talk about the shows that you're doing, obviously what we're talking about is violence and verbal harassment by parents at youth sporting events, and really, it was a problem before, but it's reached epidemic levels. We saw recently outside of Boston where one hockey father killed another. I mean, refs and umpires are getting verbally abused and physically assaulted. Fred, exactly what the hell is going on?
Well, you know, all the shows I've done, Jim, people say, is the media blowing this out of proportion? And I can tell them absolutely not. Of all the shows and everything across this country, number one, people are very concerned. The good, caring people out there that want the best for their kids are fed up with these people that are dysfunctional, destroying people of children's sports, and it has to end. The problem is that today's society that we live in, with a parent that is out there, their child has to be number one, that they're not satisfied, and therefore they'll do unbelievable things of beyond screaming and yelling at the ref, yelling at their own child. Now we have a person getting killed as a result of it. And so the question is, what do we do about it? And with the National Alliance for Youth Sports, we have a system that is set up that can easily address this and has been, and that's what I talk about in the book.
Fred, now when you talk about people doing unbelievable things that go even beyond screaming at a fellow coach or a youngster, I mean, you've heard and seen just about everything. What's the worst thing you've ever seen a parent or a coach do?
Well, you know, it's like asking a musician what's his favorite song, and there's so many of them out there. But let me give you an example. Just the other day I was on a TV show, Tampa, Florida. They went out and shot video of parents in the stands, and they asked me to react to it looking at the monitor. And here was this parent out there standing up and screaming. But when he said this, I said, this tells what's going on in this country. He yelled his child's name out, and he said, "You bum, you can never do anything right." Now, how would you like to be 8 years old and told by your parent that you're a bum? That's the problem that we have with parents who step over the line because of their own ego of having a demand that their child be number one, no matter what it is in this society. And that's what we're doing. We're destroying children's self-esteem and self-worth, and that's why it should be a big concern to us across this country.
You know, I think that's interesting. You talk about the parents destroying the kids' self-esteem and self-worth. In reality, it's almost like the reverse is happening in so much. Kids always look to their parents to get those things from them, but it's almost as if the parents are looking for some sort of athletic achievement through their kids, that they're living vicariously through them because they weren't good enough or somehow they were denied the opportunity themselves.
Well, exactly. It's what I call, I'm not going to lose a second time around. We have a massive number of people that are listening in your audience right now that are people that lost the first time around. They didn't make their Little League team. They didn't make the high school team. They always thought they could have been in the pros, and they didn't. So therefore, Billy or Mary are going to make it come hell or high water. And that's where they're putting the pressure on these kids. And that's why it's so dangerous. That sports are the greatest resource that we have for children in this country to teach them ethics and sportsmanship and teamwork and how to win and lose with grace. What are we doing? At the rate of 70%, we're driving children away at the age of 13 of the millions of kids. That's a travesty. That's an indictment on we adults who should be caring about children and what happens to them and can happen in children's sports.
Fred Engh is our guest. Fred, how horrible is that if 70% of those participating in youth sports are quitting by the age of 13 because it's no fun, because their parents are embarrassing them, obviously the message that we're trying to get across is getting lost. I mean, it's one thing where in professional sports, it's all about the scoreboard. Winning is almost everything at that level. Even you can make that argument at the college level, but at the youth level, it's not. Now, I'm not saying that you don't keep score, but at the same time, we're trying to teach the kids the importance of competing, of good sportsmanship, of effort, of having fun, of meeting friends. How can they possibly learn that message if all the parents care about is winning?
Well, that's the absolute number one question. You see, in general, Jim, before the age of 10, kids are out there wanting to play. That's by nature what they want to do. That's why they go to playgrounds, run around, get on swings and everything. That's what kids want to do. Nobody ever said that all of them want to compete in an organized setting. So what we need to do before the age of 10 is let children learn and develop a love for sports. Let them learn and develop a love for competition. Then they can participate in sports the rest of their life. But here's the bottom line. You know why it all happens? It happens in communities, which most people don't realize, that the majority of the sports programs are run by parent interest groups. They're well-meaning, caring people, but we just give them facilities. And they can have 5,000, 6,000 kids in their program, and it's run by plumbers, truck drivers, pharmacists. Who cares? It doesn't matter. They haven't been trained. We need to set up a system in every community that if it's important to have a superintendent of schools for academic learning, why is it important to have a supervisor of children's sports in every community where there are parks and recreation departments? They can then train these people that want to lease these facilities and put restrictions, put controls, put authority to say, you must live up to a code of ethics. Then they can train the coaches and demand that every coach is trained and held accountable. And the coaches can then require the parents, like they did in Jupiter, Florida, to go through an ethics and sportsmanship training. What you have then, Jim, is everybody on the same page required to live up to this code of ethics.
Hey, Fred, how bad is it? I mean, we should make the point that not every parent has a problem. In fact, most parents do not have a problem. How prevalent is the problem?
Yeah, and you know, that's what we all seem to forget here too often, is that obviously the majority of parents out there are great, caring people. And you know, people have asked me at time to time, what do you know about all this? Well, my background, very briefly, I was a high school and college athlete. I was a physical educator, a high school coach and athletic director, a recreation professional. But you know where I got the most training? My wife and I have 7 children. That's where I learned about children's sports, and that's where I understood the importance of all of this and the need to make things positive and safe, or else we destroy kids. Somebody has to do something, and the National Alliance for Youth Sports was created to do that something, and that is create a system for all communities.
Right, Fred, let me ask you this. How much of the problem that we see right now in youth sports is just the fact that it's become big business, that parents see the value of a pro contract or even of a college scholarship, so they're pushing their kids even harder?
Well, that's again a great question, Jim. I talk about it in the book under why parents are this way, and it's fear, ego, and the last one that you talked about is greed. We have the parent that is out there today that looks at Tiger Woods and can never see that Tiger Woods is a phenomenon. Tiger and his father are great examples of the very important thing that can happen to the best. But you know what? Millions and millions of kids are out there now being pushed because of Tiger, the Williams sisters, the other examples of out there of getting that money, and therefore the parent doesn't see it for the child. They say, that's my ticket. I can get you, Billy, you're 7 years old, but your mom and I have decided now you've got these fantastic baseball skills. We're going to get you into the major leagues. Just stick with us. So what do? They make them specialize in one sport. They make them year-round be involved in all of this. They never give them a chance to be a child. And what happens in the process? The kid gets sick of sports, gets burned out, and in the process has a terrible feeling about all this with their parents the rest of their life.
Hey, Fred, let me ask you this. Exactly where, and you see this time and time again, where all these parents think that they've got the next Alex Rodriguez or the next Ken Griffey Jr. or the next Mia Hamm. It's ridiculous when you consider not only is a professional career pretty much an impossibility, but even the chances of getting a college scholarship are minuscule. What I want to know is, where do they get these inflated expectations of their kids from?
Well, it's because of the type of parent that we have today. The society that we live in, every child has to be number one. And, you know, this is only my opinion on it, but we have so many families today where the parent is out there working, and we have separated families where they're not able to spend the time that they'd like. Therefore, the father that goes out and spends that time says, I'm going to give everything that I can to coach my child, therefore I can spend time with him or her. But they don't sit back and remember that this is a child that needs to learn and love sports and love the parent. What they do in the process are saying, look, I'm going to make up for this time by making you number one and demanding that their child be this excellent star, rather than stop and saying, look, this is a child. I've got to help them develop and create a great relationship. And not every kid in this world is going to be an athlete, and they'll still survive very well.
And Fred, something you've touched on also as you conduct conversations about this very topic, why do the parents and coaches in youth sports act in a manner that they would never act in any other place? Obviously, it has a lot to do with some of the things that we've already talked about. But for instance, when you see sports fans, rabid fans, follow their favorite teams, they get all worked up, is it maybe because the parents see not their favorite team, but rather their own blood, their own DNA? Is there anything to that?
Oh, there sure is, but you asked the question, why do they do that in sports? It's because nobody ever told them that they couldn't. I'll give you an example. Can you imagine a parent walking in to a classroom?
Fred, shouldn't they know the difference between right and wrong? I mean, do you need to be told not to yell at a kid or another coach?
No, what you need to do is understand that there's a thing called emotional maturity, a point in time where you step over the line. What I was saying, can you imagine a parent walking into a spelling bee and yelling at their child and saying, don't you miss this word, don't you miss this word? We would throw them out of the school at a piano recital. Can you imagine, when you get home, Mary Ann, you're going to get it from me for missing that note. We accept that in children's sports. The parents can go out there and call their kid a bum. They can tell them that they're not hustling. They can even go on beyond verbally, but physically abusing. We've heard so many examples through our 2,200 chapters across this country of not all of this verbal and physical and psychological abuse, but physical abuse that the children have to go through because they're not meeting the expectations of that dysfunctional parent.
So, Fred, what do you tell parents if you see a problem developing? How do you handle that? I mean, do you pull your kid off the field and not let the kid play? Do you confront the other parent who has stepped over the line? What exactly do you do?
That's exactly what we've been doing across this country now with our Parents Association for Youth Sports in Jupiter, Florida was the first one. They said to every parent, we've seen enough, and therefore here's the system. You go through ethics and sportsmanship training, you sign a code of ethics, and you live up to it. If you can't, you're out of here with your child. You know what that's resulted in, Jim? Now every parent is sitting out there and that looks down there and sees a coach verbally abusing their child, they can report the coach. They see another parent in the stands that is doing everything counter to these ethics. There's a system, there's accountability to get rid of these people that are destroying sports for children.
I don't understand. How sick would you have to be, for instance? I mean, it's one thing to be one parent and yell at another parent, but now how many times have we seen parents get into the 15-year-old umpire who's making $5 a game and berate the kid, yell at the kid, maybe follow the kid to his car or his bike or whatever his mode of transportation is? I mean, how sickening is that?
Well, it's terribly sickening. As you tell these stories, what I'm thinking each time you tell one is where we've had a coach under our coaches division where they must go through a code of ethics, and if they don't live up to it, they're removed. You should see the things that people have been removed for. When you mention that a coach, that a parent and a coach assaulted an official, it's exactly what happened in this case. This kid was 15 years old. He had to put the coach out of the game. His father came down at the end of the game where they confronted each other. What did the coach do? Decked his father, and the father ends up in the hospital because his 15-year-old child was trying to help out in officiating a game. That's how sick it's become. That's why it's a national problem that what we need to do is stop this and swing the pendulum back. These games belong to children. They don't belong to adults. And until the people in authority begin to look at it that way, it's going to continue to escalate. That's what I've said in the book. Here it comes and happens. And if people want to make a change, I suggest that they read the book, Why Johnny Hates Sports. And it's not to sell a book. It's to sell a concept in communities. I've been in this business.
Fred, let me jump in there. The one concept also, the one concept that you're pointing out that we need to point out as well is it's not about you, it's about the kid. It's not about the parent, it's about the kid. And one final thing, the most horrifying thing that I have ever heard is that story from Illinois where one guy was attacked by two and a kid took an aluminum bat to the guy's knee. I have never heard anything as horrifying as that.
Jim, those stories we hear all the time. And you know what? Because of the internet And because of the communication system today, we can hear about them a half hour after it happened. And I can tell you that unless we get serious about it and understand that this isn't a babysitting service for parents, that this is a tremendous educational time in a child's life, that if we don't think about it that way, then we're going to destroy what this could be and should be for millions of children to come.
The book is entitled Why Johnny Hates Sports. Fred Engh is the president of the National Alliance of Youth Sports. And Fred, again, I thought that you did very, very well last night on The Last Word, and I also thought that it was a very important topic that merited discussion on this program as well. Very good to have you on the show. I appreciate that very much.
But Jim, thanks. And you know what? It also takes people like you who care that get this message out to people.
Actually, thank you very much, Fred. I appreciate that, and I do. And I thought that was very important and worthy of a discussion also on this program. Fred Engh is the president of the National Alliance of Youth Sports. All right, there are a lot of parents. Most parents are not like that. But plenty are. We all have seen it. We all have stories. And my personal message is it's not about you. It's not about you recapturing some athletic glory that for some reason you were denied. Maybe you didn't have enough game. Maybe you got hurt. Maybe you just sucked. It's not about you. It's about the kid. Let the kid play the game. Of course, go ahead and keep score. Somebody wins, somebody loses. That is part of it. But at the youth level, it's about everything else. It's about effort. It's about dealing with adversity. It's about trying. It's about making friends. It's about sportsmanship, winning and losing gracefully. I mean, winning isn't everything when you're 8 years old. It's about the kids and not you. All right, if you want to respond to that, go ahead. Denny Nagel will be joining us shortly as well. We'll come right back.
You're listening to The Jim Rome Show.
Well, I guess you heard that, and I hope you liked it. But, you know, Jim was talking about something about that, you know, is this just something blown out of proportion? One of the things that our organization does, and that's why I'm wearing the glasses, because, you know, I can't see. These are things from what we call the press box, and it happens every week from our organization. Let me read a few of them. This was just this past week. A dad charged with assault for shoving 2 child referees. The guy goes out in the field. He didn't like what was going on. He got 2 kids that are like 13 and 14 refereeing in a hockey game. And the father comes out, doesn't like it. He shoves both of them. Now he's arrested. Good for them arresting him. The next one is a youth coach is charged with assault and battery of a student. A volunteer coach sent sexual text to a 10-year-old. 10-year-old or 26-year-old reportedly sent images. I don't want to go on the rest of it, but it's whatever. So, yeah. Does this still continue? Sure it does. Parents are out there. Are they the majority? Of course not. Are they even close to it? Of course not. But the problem is that there are too many that are causing these problems for kids. So, as I've said before, why aren't we doing something about it? And we are. And that's why Johnny hates sports. So we're going to finish with a little commercial, I think. And then we're going to see you next week. But it's been great.
In this best-selling book, a child, while failing to live up to his father's expectations, is shamed and humiliated beyond belief. He vows to never allow his own son to face the same.
Okay, like I say, thanks for coming in at 11 o'clock every Friday morning. And we're going to have some great guests in the future. I mentioned like Kirk Herbstreit and Greg Olson from the Fox and NFL. We've done interviews with them to help explain, just like Jim Rome did, about the problems across America. So thanks again for joining in. This is Fred Engh.
This program is sponsored by Sir Durf Publishing in the interest for better sports for kids. Better kids for life.
In this best-selling book, a child, while failing to live up to his father's expectations, is shamed and humiliated beyond belief. He vows to never allow his own son to face the same.